Hi everyone, I'm Sandra. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Sandra from Transition Partners. Welcome to our third virtual Taking Time in Tech webinar. We've been running lots of virtual webinars since lockdown, as I'm sure most of you will have seen. But if you haven't seen and you don't follow us, please follow us, follow Transition Partners via LinkedIn, and you can keep up to date with all our upcoming events. In fact, Rich, who we've got here, Rich Kelly from Tech Buyer, is also running another event with us tomorrow lunchtime, I believe, which is around sustainability within tech in Yorkshire. So I personally feel very strongly with regards to and passionate about mental health and general well-being. And actually before lockdown, we were in the process of putting together a quarterly face-to-face event centered all around health and well-being. Obviously, we've had the current pandemic to deal with, so that got pushed to the wayside, but I've managed to set up this Taking Time in Tech event, and it's been a great success so far. So we really want this session to be interactive as possible. We would love it if you can all take something away, some really useful tools and tips that will help you in the future. So I'm pleased to introduce, today we've got Chris Fawcett, who is a Master Life and Business Coach. Chris is NLP trained and he is a Master Practitioner. We have the lovely Richard Kenny, who is joining us. He's an IT Director from Tech Buyer. And Richard is also the trustee of a local mental health charity called Claro, who are based in Harrogate. He's heavily involved and invested in mental health and well-being. So Rich and Chris will be leading the session. However, to start with, what we'd like to do is really understand the audience that we have attending tonight. What we'd like to do is just really understand that your current concerns, worries, but before we go into that, if you can all, and I'll give you a couple of minutes because there's two questions that I'm going to ask you, each of you. So first of all, if you could let me know who out of the audience is back and working in the office and who is, so if you just give me a yes to I'm back in the office, no, still working from home. So we've got quite a few from in the office. Got a bit of a blend in, which is quite good. I think that's quite a good dynamic. A mix. We've got a few that have got that, doing a bit of a mix. Okay, fantastic. If you can keep those coming, that would be fantastic. And then my second question is, if you could list a positive that you've taken from your lockdown experience. I know obviously some of you are still working from home, but obviously we're out of lockdown now, but if you could post a positive that you've taken from lockdown to give you, I'll start and just, I guess, give you an example. I've taken two. One is I've been able to spend more time with my son, and I think some of you are already saying that you've had more family time. So I've been able to have tea with my son every night. I've been eating at like 6, half 6, whereas usually I'd be eating at like 7:30, 8 o'clock once I'd put him to bed. And I've been able to exercise every morning before work.
That's a really good one, Sandra.
I know.
Very good.
Gonna miss some of those because I'm back in the office more or less full time soon.
Yeah.
I like Paul's one there, saving the environment. We like that. Big fan of that.
Yeah.
I like that, more sleep as well, actually. I've been getting a little bit more sleep in the mornings.
The exercise one's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's interesting that saying like community exercise. I think exercise plays such a massive part in your mental health.
It just sets you up for the day as well, doesn't it? Like it really helps clear your head and gets you set up for the day.
It's good. I think
it's really good.
It's good.
It is, yeah. It is really good. It's really great to see that, you know, there have been some challenges. I'm sure everyone's had a challenge throughout this time, but there are some really good positives to come out of it, and people are, you know, creating great new habits And that's something that I've seen as well, is people creating new habits that they're then taking into the new life. You know, as they're going back into work, they are getting time to spend time with the children. They are getting time to spend time, you know, like you say, Sandra, you know, eating with your children, and exercising on a morning. If you can then you can continue that within your new daily routine. You're then bringing them new habits with you as well, which is really good.
Yeah, I think we were talking about this earlier on, weren't we, Chris, in regards to like positive habits to fight anxiety and to combat anxiety. Because I think one of the biggest issues we were talking about today really was we wanted to focus on positives. So what are people looking forward to about going back, as opposed to what are they anxious about or what are they worried about? We were talking about this quite a lot. There's been some interesting research done recently by Harvard University, which has shown the sort of neurological link between anxiety and excitement versus anxiety and calmness. And one of the big things was that mindset, and this is something Chris is obviously very strong at, is regards to positive mindsets and changing habits. And one of the things we were talking about was that this study kind of made it very clear that just simple terminology like I am excited about going back to work, it's an easier jump to get from anxious to excited than it is to get from anxious to calm. So when people when people worry and they stress and people go, oh, just calm down and think about this. That's a really hard thing to ask someone to do, is to change from a heightened sense of awareness, which is what we have in our anxiety, back to a calm mindset. Whereas it's quite an easy leap to go from anxious to excited. And me and Chris were talking about that yesterday a little bit. And Chris has got some really good tips to kind of help set up that mindset change. I think that's hopefully one of the things you'll get from this webinar today.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny actually, Rich. I was on a coaching call an hour after we had a chat yesterday, and the client said they were talking about anxiety and excited. You know, their words came out, and he was very, very clear on being excited over being anxious, but he used them quite similarly. And one of the key things for everyone just to take down as well is if you are feeling anxious at all, changing your physiology, changing the way you move, because you can very, very quickly go from, like you said, Rich, go from anxious or feeling anxiety into feeling excited and ready for something. So moving your body very quickly and saying I am excited. So it's using the sounds, it's using the visual, auditory and kinesthetic, that feeling. If you can create the feeling of excitedness in a movement like that, you know, it's very, very quickly to go from one struggle to feeling really, really good. So yeah, it's really, really interesting is trying not to be calm, is trying to become excited or focused or, you know, ready to go or motivated. You know, they're all very, very similar words, but they're all quite close to the word anxiety as well, and the feeling as well. So yeah, it's really important.
There is, I think that when we were talking about that, it was about understanding how you're feeling is one of the biggest parts of combating issues around mental health. So when we talk about anxious, we talk about excited, and we say they're on a similar spectrum. The same is true with regards to depressed and calm and tired. Those three also have a very similar connotation in regards to your physiological health and how that actually manifests. And it's interesting to look at those things there, because when we say, you know, people are worried about going back to work, what are they actually worried about? And the first thing I would obviously encourage my team to do is to look at creating a list of that, like a list of things they're defined, worried about, anxious about, concerned about, and then marry that up against a list of stuff they're looking forward to. And what you'll probably find is there's more stuff you're looking forward to than you're anxious about. And weighing them up against each other is really important. Whereas if you try and introduce that calming mechanism, I think it can have a bit of a negative effect on you. You don't really want to be calm about going back to work. You don't want to be kind of, that to me feels a bit more like you're resigned that you're going back. Whereas if we look through what we just talked about in the chat there, loads of you have got some super positives there. Most of it's family time, exercise, health, well-being, slowing down, lacking commute. These are massive positives, right? Like this is if you asked me 6 months ago, what's the one thing I'd like to get out this year? Ignore what's going on. I'd want to spend more time with my son. That's all I'd want to do. Like, do you know what I mean? That's the only thing I'd want to do. More time with my son, with my wife, with my mum, stuff like that. And I think if you can focus on what you could be grateful for, it can have a massive impact on your health and well-being. If I wrote down a list and said, what worries me about COVID? You know, it could be stuff like job security. It could be, you know, earnings. It could be whatever it is. What has it allowed me to get more from? It's all the stuff I wanted. Do you know what I mean? It's everything at the start of the year would have been on my wish list. And it's what I kind of said to a lot of people about a lot of the people we've been dealing with that have got enduring mental health problems is they're really struggling at this time because they don't know what to be excited about, and it's the uncertainty as opposed to the actual action. So one of the things we were talking about was whether or not you can become more certain. So a lot of the anxiousness around returning to work is the uncertainty of when, how, if, what it looks like. And so we've been encouraging guys in our businesses and girls in our businesses to try and come in a little bit, where at a point when they feel comfortable, to get over that initial hurdle. And I think that's a massive thing. And I'd encourage you to perhaps speak to your managers and your teams and say, you know, is there the ability to come back? Is there an ability to have a more normal interaction? Because that hopefully will dispel a lot of the issues around your anxiety about the return, because the return is then something you've got control of. And for me personally, I think anxiety is at its worst when you have no impact upon the outcome. For me, that's always the worst thing, when you sit there and go, I have no control of this situation, therefore I have no way to control it. And you can't control everything. That's it, Sandra. That's it. Like that level of control, even an illusion of control, is quite a powerful thing. You know, and Chris was talking to me about some stuff that he does in the shower that is fit for consumption. And I thought that was really interesting. I don't know if you want to go into that, Chris, in regards to that element of control and that controllability. That was really fascinating for me.
Yeah, I will do. So there's right. Let me just start again. So people say they like surprises, but they only like the good surprises, don't they? So we need an element of certainty and uncertainty in our life, because if we've got too much certainty, life becomes very, very boring. But if we've got too much uncertainty, life becomes very, very interesting, shall we say. So we need an element of that, and everyone's different. I dare say that us three here would all have different elements of uncertainty and certainty that we require in our life. You know, if you are employed, whereas you own a business, you will require a certain different levels of uncertainty and certainty. But one of the things that I do in the shower is do incantation. So you may have all heard of like affirmations, positive affirmations, which is very, very good. But an incantation is using the whole body, and it's using the physiology, and it's using the sound, and it's saying very, very powerful things to yourself whilst you're in the shower. So you create these yourself. You know, some of the things that I say: I am strong, I am fit, I am healthy. You know, I had a shower, I did some yoga earlier, and I had a shower, and they're the things that I was telling myself, so that when you come out of the shower, however long you're in there, 3, 5, 10, 15 minutes, you're in a completely different space to what you would have been had you not been talking to yourself. Because I dare say, and I know I do, and I still do it, you fall into a trance when you're in the shower, because you go into a trance of thinking about negative things. You're thinking about work, you're thinking about, you know, when you're going shopping, you're thinking about things that aren't really empowering you. So if you could spend that little bit of time in the shower creating that certainty in your own mind and creating that strength and that empowerment within yourself, you can come out of the shower and you could tear down walls, you could face anything when you come out of the shower. And that's a very private time for people, you know, when they are in the shower. And if you can come out of there and you're absolutely empowered and ready for the day, that's extremely powerful. And it's some net time, it's no extra time, it doesn't cost you anything, you're not taking any other time out of your day, it's a freebie. So yeah, I can only advise is, right, you know, a couple of 3, 4, 5 little sayings to yourself. You know, if you've got money troubles, talking to yourself about, you know, I am wealthy, I am healthy, you know, money flows to me, you know, these kind of things. You know, once you continue programming your mind over periods of time, you will start to believe it, and you will start to attract more things that you want, more energy, more health, more wealth.
I completely agree. We talked about this yesterday, and you know what? I did it this morning, and I came into bed today feeling great. But as we said yesterday, and I don't know about the audience, but I don't get long to have a shower. I've got a 5-year-old at home. I'm constantly, you know, so I've finished training. This morning, for example, I went downstairs, got him his breakfast out, quickly rushed in the shower. And usually I'd be thinking, right, what am I going to do next? What do I have to do when I get to work? I'd be thinking about my to-do list. I'd be thinking about, right, I need to decide what I'm wearing today, and I'll do it while I'm in the shower, so that when I get out, I'm quicker at getting ready and out the door. And it's like rush all the time. But I did this morning. I was just like, right, I am not going to have a mental day today. I'm going to be calm, and I'm going to go at a slower pace, and it definitely helps 100%. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's interesting because I did the same thing this morning, Chris. I went to talk about this. I despise dead time. Like, you know, Sandra knows this about me, that like the concept of wasted time sickens me. Like, I hate the idea that you stand in a queue and you're frustrated by wasting time in a queue. And Chris was saying, oh, well, that's a good time to do your affirmations. I was thinking, actually, do you know what it really is? Like, if I'm out there queuing for shopping, rather than thinking this is frustrating, this person doesn't know how to pack their shopping up at a reasonable speed, I can't control how fast they can pack their shopping. I can control whether or not I'm annoyed about it, but it's pretty, it's pretty hard. Whereas I'll sit there just thinking, like, during this pack exercise, just going, I am calm, I am ready, I am strong. You know what I mean? By the time I got to pay, I was like pretty annoyed that I had to get through the shopping, to be honest. I had a lot more to say to myself. And I honestly thought it was really useful. It's really interesting. And some of these things sound like a little bit cheesy, a little bit twee sometimes, don't they? Do you know what? There's power in words, isn't there? And, you know, we talked about it on saying, like, when we talked about this, like, from the leadership piece, and the reason we were talking about this, by the way, guys, was around understanding when you need to take care of yourself, whether you're a leader, a manager, or, you know, an employee or self-employed or whatever. We were talking about the impact you have on other people, regardless of what your role is in society and work or whatever. Because what you find is you might see yourself as an employee at work, but you're a parent at home, or you're a friend, or you're a partner. And if you're not looking after yourself, there's no way you can look after somebody else. And so we were talking about this method of affirmations as a way of kind of looking after yourself, but it not costing you, not having to feel guilty about using that time to kind of take self-care. And that's I think a problem a lot of people have in sort of senior positions, is they feel guilty about taking time for themselves. And so that use of dead time, for me, that avoids all that guilt that's built in there, going, you know, maybe I shouldn't be doing this, maybe I should be doing something else. But I'm thinking, I'm in the queue. There's no better time now to.
Yeah, that's another tip I've taken from you, Rich, when we had you on the podcast, and I was like, me and Ellie were like, how do you find the time for all that? And and you talked about, you know, just obviously making best use of time, and like you said, not having any dead time. And again, I've probably gained another hour a day from taking your advice on that. So thanks for that as well. Right? It is, yeah, definitely. You get so much more out of your time, and it's just so much better for your health and well-being, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, if you think of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis, so you get up in the morning, you're in the shower, you're making breakfast. You know, I'm usually listening to something with my earphones on, if I'm on a walk or having breakfast, or, you know, vacuuming the house, mowing the lawn. You know, they're things that ultimately need doing. Could you be learning? Could you be?
Yeah, I'm usually listening to a podcast or.
If you don't enjoy vacuuming, then, you know, listen to something good, because all you'll be doing is putting yourself in a negative state, thinking, I don't want to do this. Whereas you could think, actually, I don't mind doing this because I'm listening to X. It could be some really great music, you know, to put you in a really good mood. It could be a podcast. It could be an audio program. It could be anything. You know, the transition from like queuing, like you say, Rich, when you're traveling to work, you know, I used to hate spending time in the car until I started listening to audio programs, and I thought, well, if I'm sat in a queue, great. If it takes me 5 hours to get back from London, it takes me that's 5 hours of learning. So, you know, it's using that free time, and it's and when you get somewhere, I mean, ultimately that's how I ended up doing what I'm doing. That changed my life, because I was traveling to Hull, London, Plymouth, all over the country, and I was listening to all these audio programs on YouTube that I'd bought, and it gave me this energy and this hunger to change, and that's ultimately helped me change my life, and now I'm able to do that for other people. So I'm eternally grateful for YouTube. I really am.
Fantastic. I think it'd be really good now to, if you guys are okay with this, Chris and Rich, is to ask the audience to ask questions, or just to post in either the Q&A box or the chat box. Any, like, for those, I guess, that aren't back in the office yet, how are you feeling about it? What concern, you know, are you worried? And if so, what are you worried about? What specific concerns you have? Also, if you are in a leadership position, you know, do you have anxiety around what leadership is going to look like in, I guess, what is kind of the new world, and and how you feel about that, and because we'd love to be able to specifically answer some of your concerns and questions, so that we can make this really relevant, this discussion relevant, and give you some, as many tools and tips as we can to help you moving forwards.
Yeah, I guess while we're waiting for that, we can kind of maybe talk about that discussion we were going to have around leadership and what's required right now, because I know that was something that some of you guys are interested in. So while we're waiting for those responses to come in and we can ask on them, we were talking about what leadership looks like now, because what I think people aren't realizing is that those in leadership positions don't have any experience of these situations. So we're being asked to do an awful lot of sort of new things, and a lot of people are trying to find their way. And what we were saying was, this is now the time to show empathetic leadership, because of like Rose said there, changes the routine, causes some anxiety. So advice is around that. So you have some control over your routine. Like, you just have to find what that looks like. So whether that's like planning your day at home, whether it's planning when you get back to work, whether it's discussing with your managers or your team what now looks like, you can implement routine in a time of uncertainty, and that's a really important thing to be focusing on. The thing for me with routine is always you're never actually receptive of someone else's routine. You're never on someone else's time. You have to always remember that you're on your own time at all times. So you might work a 9 till 5, you might work a 9 till 6, but realistically those hours are just hours. They're just a measurement of time. So your routine isn't being at work. Your routine is achieving outcomes or objectives or whatever it is. And that's a really good point, that feeling of not having a routine is really difficult. If you're routine led, and I'm plan led, so like for me to develop a routine gives me control of my day, my situation, my uncertainty. So what I would say there is, if you're looking at developing or things are feeling worse because you feel like they're spiraling out of control, look at what you're doing that's constant. So if you're at home, do you have a constant routine? Do you have a certain wake up routine? Do you have a certain time? Are you achieving everything you want to achieve? And if you're not, what do you want to be achieving, and how do you fit it in? And that will then structure your day for you. And I think if you start with the day, it leads to the week and it leads to the year. I think that's the important way to think, is think small and let it grow from there. So that's a big one for me. I don't know what you think, Chris, in regards to uncertainty around routines and issues.
Yeah, routines are a funny one. I mean, I coach people on creating a routine for themselves. However, things I'm learning at the moment are about changing your routine up a little bit. So I've actually started changing my routine up on a sort of day-to-day, weekly basis, depending on what I feel like at that point in time. So I know it sounds a little bit funny, but when we get in a routine, we're actually creating a predictable future. Whereas if we decide one morning we're going to go for a walk instead of maybe reading or doing something slightly different, we're in a position then to take charge of our lives. It's like going left instead of right. So we're actually taking a bit more control back. Instead of feeling I have to do this, this and this on a morning, could you do it slightly differently? And I know that it's massively changed my outlook on life in the things that I'm doing on a morning especially, and on an afternoon. But one thing about the anxiety as well is that there's a couple of prongs to go at this as well, is as a leader, and you can also ask your team and you can ask yourself, but it's what specifically are you feeling anxious about? Because we say we have anxiety, but that's a very broad term for quite a generalized scenario. So when we break it down, you can ask ask your team, what specifically are you anxious about? And you'll usually get to a reason, or it's actually not really a reason at all. We've just created something in our mind where we do feel anxious. There's, especially being a coach, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. People don't always say what they mean, but they don't always mean what they say. And we generally say something to cover something else up. So somebody may say they're feeling anxious, but actually they may be feeling something different. And if we get down to that level, we can then help them on a deeper level. And that's really, really powerful. The other angle is, how can you change your focus, which you touched on there, Rich. So, that's almost avoiding the scenario, but instead of focusing on the anxiety, what can we focus on now to take our mind away from that feeling? So there's a couple of options in there, but they're both extremely powerful. If you want to get to the deep-rooted cause of the anxiety, it's asking how specifically can we understand that, but being empathetic in that, not how specifically, say it in quite a nice term, and the tonality of your voice, showing that you care. And this is the key thing that I've understood from this whole time, is that as an employee, as an employer, as a director, as a leader, we all need to respect each other's model of the world, that we're all looking through it through a slightly different lens. We've all got different upbringings, we've all got different lives, we've all got different scenarios that we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis, and we all need to appreciate that somebody has something different going on at home as well. I think that's really, really key.
Yeah, I agree.
Brilliant. So we've had some really great questions come through.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've got about 6 or 7 questions. I don't know if you've seen the questions. I don't know if you want me to go through them in any particular order, or should I just...
Do you want, are we okay to just grab them as they come in?
Yeah.
So can I start with that first one? It was how did you learn about empathetic leadership?
Yeah, I was going to start with that one.
Yeah, you know what? If you want my experience, it's from really crap leaders. That's how I've learned about it. That sounds awful, but I've been badly managed, I've been badly looked after, and I've been very badly treated by quite a few people. And that's where I've learned to get it right. So I like to think that every experience is reflecting on what's happened to you and changing the outcomes afterwards. So experience is not about being passive. It's not about, you don't gain experience over years, you gain it through outcomes. I've got an internet connection stable thing, so hopefully you can still hear me. But yeah, I would say the best way to learn is through terrible experiences. You can listen to podcasts and you can listen to inspiration, but if it doesn't resonate, it's just words and it's just noise. So for me, the biggest thing for me was learning what was bad. And also, empathy is the key skill in negotiation, and it's also the key skill in people management. If you don't have a well-developed sense of emotional intelligence and empathy, then you need to develop that. And there's millions of ways you can do that. You can speak to coaches like Chris, who will help you understand how to empathize and understand how to get in someone else's shoes. But I do a lot of work on negotiation, because negotiation is about seeing stuff from other people's viewpoints. That's all that is. That's all negotiation is, looking at somebody else's points and going, yeah, I can understand that. I don't have to agree with it, I understand it. But if you want to become an empathetic leader, if you want to improve that skill, and every interaction you have, try and take their point of view on board. Sit there and think, what would I do in their position? Now, that doesn't mean what would I do knowing what I know. It means what would I do if I was them? And when you get to the point you understand what they would do, then you've developed that skill to a degree. And that for me is a really important part of leadership, is that if you're not the person that can understand the person you're dealing with, then you can't be in charge of them properly. You can manage them and you can manage their work and you can look at what they do and put a tick in a box, but you can't effectively look after somebody if you can't see through their eyes or walk a mile in their shoes. So if you want to learn about it, you just need to live it every single day. You just need to try every single day to get in that other person's shoes and live their life for a little bit. Because as Chris just said 2 minutes ago, everyone's going through different things. And if you put how you feel on someone else, you've already messed up, because you're not them. So if it comes down to learning, for me, learn from every single experience, get it wrong, and then don't get it wrong again. Because the first time you hurt someone and upset somebody, if you don't learn from that, you need to have a long hard look at yourself.
Yeah, it's listening as well. Listening is one of the most powerful things you can do, and we tend not to be very good at that. We tend to want to jump in, don't we? And I'm as bad for it as anybody, but when you're listening to somebody, it's really, really important listening to people and what they're saying, and then also, and like Rich says, is thinking about what they may have said, why they may have said it, but putting yourself in their shoes and looking at it through their glasses. There's some benefits of this as well, though, because when you then start to understand this kind of stuff, this helps you in negotiation, it helps you in influence. When you can understand somebody's needs and wants, it puts you in a very, very powerful position, not only to negotiate, but to influence, but to lead them in a proper manner. So it's very, very, very powerful. And I think it's something we all need to master, is the power of leadership and influence, ultimately. Power of communication.
I think on the note of listening, obviously it's very, very important, because if you can't and haven't listened, you know, you can't deal with if it is a solution or an issue, or you know, but I think we all kind of get, and I guess the feedback that we got from the attendees is that everyone's really enjoying the slower pace of life and having more time. But I know from my personal experiences, I'd like to think that I'm good at listening, but I know for a fact that there's been a number of times where I haven't, and that's not because I don't care and that I'm not empathetic, but it's because I'm busy and I've got 101 things rolling around in my head, and so I'm there in body, but my mind is elsewhere, so I'm not quite present. And I think that's a common mistake that people make, and it's just, I guess, being able to recognize that and try your best to rectify it moving forwards. But it can be, and that's one thing that I found during lockdown and coming out of lockdown, that it slowed me down as a person, and I feel like I have more time now, and I can be more empathetic and more understanding.
Yeah, it's interesting you said that, because actually, like, physical and emotional state are like very closely linked. So your ability to feel breaks down the second you're tired. So you know what I said this yesterday. I said that basically, like, as a leader, you're not allowed to be tired, because if you're tired, you make mistakes. And it's interesting. This is what we're talking about, and this is probably also to do with one of Paul's questions that he asked as well around performance management. And basically, your mood, your physical, mental health impacts your ability to feel as another person. It impacts your ability to have empathy. So you don't realize this, but when you're busy and you're run down and you're shattered, your ability to listen disappears. You're not really hearing what people are saying, even if you're listening to the words. And that's why we said that self-care part is really, really important. The first thing I'd always say is, for anyone makes a decision, is always, and this probably ties in regards to what Tony's asking about, you know, coming out of lockdown, facing redundancy. You need to assess your state first before you make any decisions, because you will not make a good decision when you're tired or emotionally drained. And it can be quite hard to recognize both of those things. You know, me and the MD had this chat at the business, like, maybe last week, where I just took a couple of days off at short notice, because what I found I was doing was being busy, and I hate being busy. I don't mind having a full day and having my priorities in order, but I despise being busy, because that just means I'm not organizing my time well. And I found that I wasn't responding to stuff well because I was busy, and the reason I was busy was because I was tired, and I was burnt out, and I was knackered. And I had to take some time away to come back, and you come back and you're hungry, right? You're ready. And I guess that's what I would say in regards to what you've asked there, Tony, in regards to someone coming out of lockdown and faced with going through redundancy. How much control do you have over this redundancy? Like, is this something you have to be passive on, Tony, or is this something you can drive? Like, can you take redundancy, or are you going to be made redundant? Like, what are your options around that? Because that determines how you approach this whole situation. So you're coming out of lockdown. Have you spent your time wisely? If you haven't, how much more time do you have now based on this redundancy? So if you say, okay, I'm going to come out of lockdown, furlough ends, I've got a month's redundancy. Now's the time. That month now is not to kind of sit there, wait and worry. Now's the time to plan, act and do. So now's the time to go, is this the job I want to be doing? If I want to do something similar, can I retrain? Is there other options? Who do I have to support? Who am I reliant on? These things all need to be part of your decision. And once you've written them down, they're out of your head. Take that day to then go, I'm not thinking about this, and then come back at it and come up with a plan. Because only you know what you want to do next.
Do you think, I've got another lot of concept on Sandra's question there and comment. So do you think, because before lockdown, you were in the office, you're busy, you're very, very accessible, anyone can come and see you, I'm assuming there. Do you think because you were at home for a longer period of time and meetings have to be booked in, and, you know, Microsoft Teams or Zoom calls have to be booked in, so it's actually giving you control of when people speak to you? Because I remember my mobile not ringing for months because I was on Zoom, but I was speaking to people when I wanted to speak to them. So instead of somebody coming, I mean, I work from home anyway now, but, you know, when I worked on sites and in offices, you were always constantly accessible. So somebody would come over to you, you know, you're knee deep in doing some work, in really deep work. Somebody comes over and breaks your pattern of thought. You don't want to speak to them because they've come over and interrupted you. But whereas now this new way of working, where a lot of people are working from home, things are more planned. So you've actually got control of when you speak to people. Oh. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? And that comes back to the fact that when somebody comes over to you and asks you a question, there's something else gone wrong, hasn't there? There's been improper planning in terms of why they've got a question. And, you know, should we be having little breakout sessions for question time? I know that one of my clients, he had to say to his staff, I can't work like this because you're just asking me questions all day long. So they're now creating like 15 minutes every 2 hours or 30 minutes every 2 hours to say, right, let's save up the questions and then let's have a quick meeting between us and we'll go from there. So I may or may not be, I may be wrong or may be correct there, but it's just quite interesting to see the other side of it.
That's interesting, is that, Chris? Because I have a complete opposite approach to that.
Oh.
Like, I think if someone's coming to talk to you, it's because they need your help. And I think by scheduling their time, you're saying my time is more important, therefore I will protect it. And you will deal with me on my time scales. And that, I think, is a problem. I'm not, by the way, I'm just playing devil's advocate here on this one, because I'm the same as you, in that by the time you've had a whole day of people walking up and emailing, you've probably achieved very little. But you have achieved very little. That doesn't mean they have. And I think that's the important part, is that someone's walking up to you because they want your help or your assistance, and they want your input or your experience. It's really difficult for me to say, schedule that time. If someone comes up to you and says, hi, I need an hour of your time about this, that's an unreasonable request, isn't it? If you go, that's not really fair. Now you're basically saying your time is more important than everybody's. But if someone then says, so I'm very much for scheduling that time. But I would say that if someone comes up and they's like, I need 2 seconds of your time, I'd rather waste my whole day with those 2 second break-offs all the time and have other people do stuff and then make my time up later on. And I'm not saying that's the right way to do it. It's just, I think, especially right now, I don't like the idea of scheduling everyone's time. I like the idea of people coming up to me and saying, I've got a problem, can you help me with it? And just to be clear, sometimes I'm going to find that frustrating, because I'm going to be halfway through something that by breaking off has cost me an hour to break off, because I have lost that kind of thought. But it's not for me to take that out on them. Do you know what I mean? There's a reason people come up to you, right? There's a reason people are approaching you. And I'm just to be clear, I'm not saying it's not tricky. I'm not saying it's not difficult.
I'm not saying it's right either. That's the best bit, because it's just interesting, isn't it? It's interesting how the way of the world has changed in terms of scheduling time. And I think we need to come back to somewhere probably in the middle of it. And I think it was really important what you touched on earlier, Rich, the fact that why somebody may be coming to speak to you. I think that's what we need to get quite clear is, are they just coming up to ask a daft question, although there is never a daft question, or is there actually an issue? So I think that's quite key to be aware of. And this is why speaking to everyone, this scenario is so sensitive and so interesting to work with, because everyone's different. Everyone thinks something is okay or may not be okay. It's very, very interesting to be a part of it and to try and understand it as well. So yeah, I think it'd be really key for you to tell everyone why you sort of mentioned that earlier as well, Rich.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I'd say is, on the walk up, just what I was talking about, I have like a rule for my guys, and I call it a 15-minute rule, which means that if you come up to me and ask me a question that I can Google and give you the answer, then I'm going to be upset. That is my standard rule, and that's maybe why I don't mind the walk up, because I'm thinking, because my first question used to always be, and you have to train your teams to do this, I think. But my first question, it's planning. This is exactly it. Like, this is control the controllables. If I have 100 people coming up every day and I sit there and think, do you want me to type something into Google for you? Because that's not what I do. Like, that's not my job. Like, I am not. The number of times
I've said that. Have you Googled it?
You only have to ask it once now. Now it's just the look where you look up and just go, am I going to just Google this? And they go, I'll see you later. I'm like, good. Okay, that's fine. But then I'd also say, why are they coming to you then if they know? Because if you know a team member's not lazy and they're coming up to you to check something that they could have Googled, why are they doing that? Because it's probably not because they're lazy. Do you not think that's maybe the right time to step in and be the leader and go, what do you think is the situation around this? Why are you asking me this? And it can be that uncertainty. And do you not find that normally leads to a better conversation? Why are you asking this? The answer's this, but you knew the answer was this. So why are you asking? I don't want to get it wrong. What do you think will happen if you get it wrong? Well, I'll get told off. Have I ever told you off? No. Has someone told you off recently? Well, I've kind of been on the receiving end of a bit of flack from this guy. Would you like me to talk to that person and maybe ask them to approach you in a different manner? Yeah, that'd be really good. So actually what you wanted to do was come and talk to me and tell you've got a problem with how you've been treated by another manager, but you don't know how to raise that subject, and it all comes from you asking me to do a Google search for you. And that's that's exactly what we're talking about, Sandra, about being too busy to answer that question. If I schedule time, they're just going to go, actually, you know what, don't bother, because they don't want to sit in a meeting and say, I don't like how I'm being dealt with. And I think there's a question in regards to, is this the new normal? Is this how it's going to be going forward? I think it's really important that time blocks and formal communication doesn't replace face-to-face time and informal conversations. And I think my worry is that in some businesses it will. I think everyone's going to hide behind email and phones and scheduled meetings and not actually figure out how their teams are doing. And that for me is a concern.
We've been back, say, like in terms of the more or less the full team for like a week or two. We've been doing shift rotations, and I found just in the last couple of weeks, the meetings, obviously we've been socially distancing, but some of the face-to-face meetings I've had with some of the team, we've both got so much more out of them versus the same meeting that we would have had either over the phone or on a Zoom session. So I do think it's really important to try and have that mix. I mean, I'd be interested to the Paul's question. I'd be interested to get both your views on this, actually. And Paul asked, that he said he was concerned about people's development and growth whilst working remotely, and he's keen to ensure that his teams are learning and growing, and finding it difficult to like read body language and difficult on a video call. Is there something that we could do or implement moving forwards where we've got some kind of mix? How do we manage that? How do we manage that with our staff so that we know that we're reading the situations in the right way, and we know that they're comfortable if we did move to, say, I don't know, I know I spoke to somebody the other day who said, well, I'm happy for my staff to work remotely 24/7. We'll just meet up once a week face to face. But, I guess not everyone's comfortable with that. And how do we manage this? And how, I'd be really good to hear your views on that.
I honestly think like offices are going to be the places where senior management sit and people come in to have those conversations. I honestly believe that that's what we should be working towards. I think if you move to the majority of your workforce remote, and your offices should fundamentally be problem solvers sat and available for people's time. That's what I honestly think we should be doing, so we can have that collaborative space, and the people that can make decisions and can incorporate that collaboration. That should be what an office looks like now going forward. Just in my opinion, I love the idea of my team coming in for half an hour to have a face-to-face meeting and talk about something like that, and have that meeting and pick up on those verbal and physical cues. And I would be encouraging all my team to come in whether they really want to or not, because I think what Paul said there is really interesting, because there's an element of digital culture which isn't very well explored at the moment. When you talk about culture and its impact on communication, you generally think, Hosted's research into, power distances and all this sort of stuff, and how people view themselves as individualist or collective based on the company culture. I think there's an element of digital culture which we have to get a grip on to communicate better. And I don't just mean sitting in a chat and listening to people talk. Like, there's an element of digitization which kills those verbal and non-verbal cues, whether it's eye contact, whether it's hand movements, all this sort of stuff. It isn't really well explored yet. So I think you're always going to have a problem, Paul, if I'm honest, if you don't get some face-to-face time. What do you think, Chris?
I think I'm just looking at the anonymous attendee as well, just in terms of how to motivate a team as well. So there's a couple of things from reading people's body language as well. From an NLP side of things, neuro-linguistic programming, sensory acuity. So, doing a body language course would be key for managers and leaders, maybe. I know it's quite effective in terms of reading people's, eye movements and how they breathe and various things like that. So the more we can understand about, if we are having to communicate online, especially if you're working abroad. I mean, you've got an office in Berlin, Sandra, haven't you?
Well, we've got one person in Berlin.
Okay, so, but yeah, you're not going to be flying to Berlin you will do more online communication. So learning how to communicate effectively online is critical if it's going to remain online to some extent, or depending on what industry, what business. So yeah, learning how to communicate is critical. I mean, I think it's only 7% of your actual voice is part of the communication style. 93% is other bodily functions. So there's so many things that you can do.
You got any quick tips?
Again, it's watching and listening. It's taking that second, especially in obviously not in this environment, but in a leader employee role or meeting like that. It's taking that second to just sit back, but creating rapport with people, following where they're moving, not like to the T, but creating rapport with somebody is very, very important, and getting that connection, so watching what they're doing. If they're moving back, you can move back, if they're moving in, if they maybe scratch you find yourself in that rapport situation when you're in a good connection with somebody and when you get on with somebody. But you can very, very easily create rapport by watching what they do and following somebody's actions as well. It's really powerful. But yeah, from a motivation perspective for teams as well, I think it would be really key to understand what motivates people. So, you could ask them the question, how can I lead you the best? People would generally give you an honest answer. How can I motivate you? Because some people want more time, some people want more money, some people want more freedom to work flexibly. So if you understand what people want, you can, within your role and realm, you can probably provide that, within reason. I know Gary Vee, a famous businessman, he's like, he wants to buy the New York Jets. He's like, I don't expect any of my team to want to buy the New York Jets. It's not a normal goal, is it? But he says, I appreciate that they're not like me. So I also appreciate them never to want to work as hard as me because I want to buy the New York Jets. But I've got lots of staff who are motivated and inspired and influenced very, very differently. And I make sure that they are motivated in that different way. And I think that's important.
I'm interested by that question, Paul, in regards to growth and development and why you think that's harder remotely to monitor. Just out of curiosity, like I could be really like management wanky here and just say, you've got PDP in place and you're talking about people's professional development and stuff like that, but like, let's not be those people. But do they have a current growth and development plan that is relevant for online? Do you know what I mean? There's not many industries that people can't be looking for opportunities for CPD and stuff while they're away. So I am interested in that question in regards to why that becomes harder than being face to face. I'd be more worried about people's emotional development, if I'm honest, and their commitment to business objectives. Because fully remote, like there's a certain, I'm going to use the word magic because I'm an absolute wiener, and there's a certain magic to being in the office that I feel that helps you focus and feel like you're pulling together as part of something. And at home, I don't think you can have that. Do you know what I mean? I think like you're all these little nation states on your own at home. Whereas when you're together, you're a team, aren't you? And all I can say is that the professional development side of things shouldn't be separate, whether it's at home or whether it's in the office. But the team thing very much is. So, I mean, as Chris has said, talking initially about the hygiene factors, about money, about time, about, titles, prestige, or whatever you want to call it. But then let's really talk about the motivational factors in regards to praise, responsibility, and all the rest of it. Like, a really good one for me is always, I know which people in my team respond well to praise and which ones don't. And just because we're remote, then I'm not saying something out loud and going, oh, wow, that was really good. I find ways to identify good behaviors from my people and like praise them publicly, because I know for certain people they like that. And that for me is a key motivational factor. So I think one of the key things is to look at what your motivational triggers are for your teams and still make sure you can fulfill them. So that might be for me, like someone did a good piece of work for me the other day. I've messaged their manager, copied them in, and be like, just want you to know this person's an absolute legend. Like, you're so lucky to have this person in your team. And it costs nothing to do that, but to go out and find something positive isn't difficult, but it is very necessary. And I think while you're remote, it becomes more necessary because you can't just look over and say, good job, well done. You have to find ways to actually actively communicate that. So I think that might be a big part of it, if I'm honest, Paul. I think you need to find those motivational triggers for your teams and see which ones can work with distance-based communication.
Yeah, there's really, really important. Because we all work away from pain and towards pleasure. Some of us will work more away from pain and will be motivated by feeling the pain to get towards pleasure. Others will have maybe visualized and sensed the pleasure and work towards it. So there's also that, motivating your staff with working towards something good or working away from something bad as well. And that just takes some listening and understanding of the people and the staff that you work with, of what actually motivates them. Because that's also really important, because I'm quite motivated working towards something, but I know a lot of other people, they need the fire up the backside, because they might feel the consequences. But again, as Rich said as well, there's also people that need to have the pat on the back. They need to be told certain things. Some people know they've done a great job automatically. I think you might have done it, meta programs, Myers-Briggs. Some people know automatically they've done a fantastic job. Some people need like two recognitions. So it's it's a minefield. But ultimately, listening to people and just seeing how they react with certain things, trying it out. If it doesn't try something different, try again, and you'll finally crack it, and then you can model it, and then you can go from there. So yeah, good luck.
Cool. Just conscious of time. So with this on the chat pane, there's been like a general theme around anxiety with like the change of routine, pre-work anxiety, like the night before or the morning, struggling to switch off. Might be good to cover off some of those. And like, I know one thing, like in my position, like as a leader in particular, what's created anxiety for me, and I'm sure there's lots of other people out there that have felt the same, is the whole, I guess, and Rose mentioned the change in that routine. And it's like, at the moment, I feel like every week or every other week, we're having to change it up a little bit. And, because like as a business, we've got a mix of people that are working full-time on the furlough flexi scheme, part-time flexi scheme, and then we've still got people on furlough. And it's like, when's the right time to bring them back? When's the right time to up the days, up the hours? Do we need to drop it again? We're having everyone back in the office. When, what days? And it's that constant, like, that's created a lot of anxiety for me. And then obviously I guess it kind of ties back in with what few other people have said around that whole routine, like how we're all trying to head towards some kind of new norm, but we also all like, generally, we're creatures of habits and we all like routine. How do we manage all that, and how do we manage the anxiety that comes with it?
Well,
that's a lot.
So, one of the things is to, if you are feeling anxious, and this might sound completely the backwards way to do things, but almost accept that this is a feeling for a period of time, and give yourself 90 seconds, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to say, I'm going to feel like this. And this is where the power of language comes in. I am going to feel X in 2 minutes time. So give yourself that moment, do whatever you need to do, go, if you need to get a soundproof room and just go have a shout for a moment, or whatever you need to do, stamp your feet. And it sounds funny, but give yourself a time limit, but be very, very strict with the language that you use. So I will feel this. I commit to feeling this. I am going to feel good. I am going to feel excited. I am going to use the feelings that I've got and turn them into some positive energy, because we've all got energy floating around us. And I know it sounds a little bit woolly, but it's what we do with that energy. I am going to focus on going that way instead of going down that path of anxiety. And who knows where that takes us. So that's one great thing, is just taking that time and just saying, look, I accept it, it's here, but in 30 seconds time, I'm going to feel something completely different.
Yeah, I like that. For me, it's always control the controllables. Like, you can only control what you can control. And for me, it's always lists. Like, when I have that exact problem, and we talk about like not being able to sleep because you're so worried about the day ahead, I used to have that so viciously that by day 3 on a holiday of a week, I'd be not sleeping for the rest of my holiday and coming back from my holiday absolutely exhausted. And I'm sure people can understand that as well, because by day 3, You're thinking, soon be home, got problems to solve, there's going to be a lot going on, I should check my emails, I need to make sure there's nothing terrible, I need to make sure the world hasn't ended while I've been away from my job. But you know what? That's your ego talking. That's all that is. Like, that's you thinking that the world doesn't turn without you. And you know what? It does. Like, it really, really does. So what can you control and what can you impact and what can you actually do? So for me, I would honestly say, if you can't sleep the night before, write down what's actually on your mind that you can deal with and decide whether you are going to deal with it right now, or if not. And Chris's point here is fantastic. I love this. Set yourself a time limit. Like, you're going to sleep at 10 o'clock. Write your list down at 9 o'clock and go, can I do anything about any of this till tomorrow morning? Well, yeah, I could work all night and do it. Okay, well, that's one option. Are you going to do that? No, I'm going to do it at 7 o'clock tomorrow, and I will sort it at 7 a.m. All right, then. I guess you'll have a good night's sleep.
That's it. There's the book called The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and he's got a bit of a flow chart in it. And I use this at an old company I used to work at. And do you have a problem? No. Then why worry? Do you have a problem? Yes. Can you do something about it? Yes. Then why worry? Do you have a problem? Yes. Can you do anything about it? No. Then why worry? So there's not actually any point in worrying about anything, because you can either deal with it or you can't. And again, it takes a little bit of time to get over it. But as Rich said, there's various different things you can do. You can jot things down. You can go and do it. You can go and exercise. Going for a 30-second, doing a 30-second sprint on the spot will change your physical state. You will stop thinking about certain things. There's another tip or technique as well, is called the rocking chair method as well. So if you can imagine yourself at 85, 90 years old, sat on your porch or on the decking in the back garden, and just imagine yourself having worried and continue worrying about these certain things that we're worrying about, and what will that do to your life? So it will take you down a path of thinking this isn't good. So you need to switch it around and start thinking something differently. So start visualizing a life where there is no anxiety. Some nice breathing, and you will soon start feeling in a good place. So you'll go into a nice place, close your eyes and just visualize something really, really relaxing.
I love that. I'd also say, if you've got a problem, think about it and say, am I going to still give a crap about this in 30 days?
Yeah.
And you know what? That really helps de-escalate situations that are on your mind. So if you've identified that it's something you can deal with, and you think in 30 days time, is this going to still be hurting me and I can't deal with it, then why are you thinking about it? Like, when we do that from a business point of view, like, you see something really disappointing happen and you go, am I going to care about this in 30 days? It might seem like the biggest disaster today. But in 30 days time, unless I'm reminded about this, am I even going to care? And if the answer is no, then I'm going to be like, well, I'll just let that go then. Because there will be something I do care about and I need to spend my time on that. And
this comes down to mastering your mindset. This comes down to what we discussed earlier on. It comes down to working on your mindset, your self-talk. Whenever you can, be talking to yourself in a good, strong, positive way. And I don't just say positive, I say strong as well. The words try, they're not words that you want to be using with yourself when you're talking to yourself. You need to be using really, really strong, powerful language. I will, I am, I commit, I have. These are words that command the subconscious mind to listen, and they will provide you with the feeling that you want. And yeah, it's just yeah.
Fantastic. So some really useful content there and tips. I believe we've gone through all the questions, but let me just double check. I don't know if you've got time to.
We could go all day, really, couldn't we? I think.
I know. I can't believe an hour's just passed. Like,
quick by, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been fasting today, so it's taken my mind off hunger anyway.
Oh, good. But yeah, just going back onto the mindset, I lost my own train of thought there.
Go on. Sorry.
Overcoming anxiety is creating a mindset that's strong and powerful. Begins as soon as you wake up. So you could go as soon as you wake up. You could be thinking about work, or you could be thinking about something you're grateful for. If you can put a smile on your face instantly, waking up at 5 a.m, 6 a.m, 7 a.m, whatever time you get up, you can put a smile on your face, and that your day is going to change. The more you can prime the brain, and the more you can prime your mind to be in a better state of mind, the better day you'll have, the better week you'll have, the better month you'll have, and you'll have less anxiety, you'll have less feelings of depression or whatever it may be. So the more you can do to master your mindset is absolutely critical, whether it's 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it may be. Wherever you can sneak something in, you're going to start taking control, and then you are in control of your mind, and you are in control of how you feel. And if a thought or feeling comes in, you can just say, fine, no problem, I dealt with it, yeah, it was a disaster, fine, we'll move on and go on to something else. And that brings me on to just very, very quickly, the language that we use with ourselves. So saying something is a disaster, is it actually a disaster? The language that we use, it was a catastrophe, that's putting a lot of meaning on a certain scenario. So it's not saying dumb down the language that we use with certain things on negative things, but the more emphasis we put on, and if we swear or we say it in a certain way, we put in so much meaning into it, and therefore that creates an emotion within the body. So I like to use the word interesting or challenging or something like that on a really, really not so great scenario. I'll say that was quite interesting, wasn't it? And people look at me, but I see it as a learning curve. So the language that we use with ourselves is extremely powerful on a day-to-day basis, because we can change the meaning to certain things, certain scenarios.
Definitely. Some great tips there. So last question, quickly, if we've got time, and then we'll wrap it up. I thought this was a good one. So does anyone have any tips for creating an open, safe space with your teams? I would like to do more of this, but conscious that I don't want to push this on the team. And I think more than now than ever, that's probably quite a
and it's really hard, isn't it? Because people are trying to create these safe spaces that suit them. Like we had some like good channels earlier on that had loads of action, and so I think someone said that they put like a positivity channel up on the work and stuff. And I bet that's like, it started off strong and then died off as people went back to old habits. So creating that space is really tricky. If I knew how to do it, I'd be doing it.
It's hard to get that consistency, isn't it?
It is.
Every day, other things just take over, don't they?
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that you guys are thinking like this, which means you're halfway there. Because the biggest problem is that people that aren't thinking like this are the ones that probably need to be listening to this sort of stuff. There's some great questions like Q&A, and one of those ones is like, I want to create a safe place and a safe channel and as a positive sort of environment. Then go and do it. And if people don't respond to it, try something else. I think Chris said this earlier on, like trial and error is like the key to these things. Like it doesn't matter if you do something, it doesn't work. The intention is going to be sound. So whatever you think's the best, have a crack. If people respond to it, wonderful. Not everyone will. And don't take it to heart. Don't think you're doing the wrong thing. You just can't please everybody all the time. But, you want to create a safe and, available space, then just do it and use whatever channels you want. If you want to put it on Teams, or you want to do it on Slack, or you want to have an email distribution group that you can send a good thought to every day that everyone can choose to immediately delete or interact with. If you want to put a Facebook group together, if there's a million mechanisms you can do this digitally. And I'm not saying any of them will work, but just have a crack, like have a go. And what's the worst that can happen?
Trial and error.
If people don't respond, they don't respond. I don't know what the rest of you guys think, but like I, for one, would be really grateful if someone took the care and effort to say, hey guys, this is kind of an open, safe place we can have a chat about whatever you want. And if I didn't want to use it, that's on me. But I'd be pretty pleased that someone had thought of something for me and for my well-being. So, do it and fail, and everyone will feel better for it.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Chris and Rich. There's some really great, useful tips there. I hope that the audience you've all felt that you've had something or more than something to take away from this session. I know I certainly have. So I hope you've enjoyed the evening. Chris, Rich, are you happy for some of the guys to, if anyone wants to reach out to you directly, maybe via LinkedIn, if they would like any further advice, tips, particularly Chris, feel free to reach out to Chris if you feel like any of your organizations may benefit from Chrissy's services. I'm sure Chrissy's more than happy to provide some more additional information. And as I said previously, Rich is a trustee of Claro Mental Health Charity. So I'm sure Rich has probably got a lot more tips and advice up his sleeve that he could share as well if anyone needs any help.
Yeah, just get in touch, guys. Like, just get in touch. I really appreciate like you all making the time for this as well. Like, there's some really good questions. Everyone's fed back really well. I'm really pleased you've engaged with it, because I think some of the stuff you're asking and some of the stuff you're saying is really valuable. I think you're actually thinking in a really good, positive way. Take a couple of tips away and be more like Chris. That's my advice from this meeting.
Definitely, 100%.
More like Chris.
It has been really great, and it's brilliant to communicate with different people and listen to different questions, and I think, like I said, we've both had different views on it. We've all had different views on it, and I think that's really key as well, because there's always something you can take from something, isn't there? And three minds create a fourth. So, you know, I dare say that if we put our heads together for a day, we'd come up with some really, really great content, works, whatever it may be. I'm sure we could put something amazing together. So, yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you all for
Thanks very much. Thanks for your time. Have a lovely evening, everybody.
Thanks very much. Have a great evening. See you all next time.
See ya.
Bye.